Hey everybody, it's Dr. Julie Quinn here, and I want to introduce you to 421's Module 2. You have spent the first week we've spent the first week introducing ourselves to each other and talking about Writer's Platform in general and establishing a brief writer's bio, you know, those blurbs that tend to appear on the back of a physical text. It's really funny because I was just in Barnes & Noble the other day and I was buying a couple of books. I got my hands on a gift card, and so I went wild and I went crazy, and I was buying a blurb, and one of the books I bought was Neal Stephenson's Termination Shock. And here is Neal Stephenson's blurb. It says, Neal Stephenson is the best-selling author of the novels Fall, or Dodge and Hell, The Rise and Fall of Dodo with Nicole Gallen, Seven Eves, which is amazing, Reamed, Anathem, The System of the World, and so on and so forth. So it lists like 10 of his books. He lives in Seattle, Washington. That blurb is under 100 words long, short and sweet and to the point. Other information, of course, is information that's related to audience understanding. What type of sort of synopsis can we give this text that will drive reader interest and make a reader go from just standing in the aisles at Barnes & Noble or at your local library, from just sort of reading the brief description of the book into purchasing or checking out the book. And that's really going to be the focus of what's happening this week. So we've got the module introduction. You read this information to get started, and then you've got some background with this module overview. And what's interesting here, and what you're going to find, is that we talk about multiple audiences, and plenty of the prior English classes that you've taken from 112 to 340, you've established this understanding of audience. And remember, you're writing for dual audiences. You're writing to capture attention of editors, right? You're also trying to capture the attention of readers. And so you have to consider dual audiences. You have to consider sort of the professionalism aspect for the editors in your life. And then you have to consider the content aspect, the thematic aspect that will appeal to your readership. And so this is what we're going to explore this week. Okay. In the next reading, the readings and resources, we go back to building your author platform text. I had a prior announcement a couple of days ago that hopefully will allow everybody to gain access to the Build Your Author platform, going into, I believe it was in ProQuest database, to create an account. It's free, and to be able to then go in there and download. Now, your purpose for this is you can just read in the skim method, chapters 1 and 2. You know, you don't have to sit and take notes on every word. Scan chapters 3, 5, and 6. So what is the difference between skimming and scanning? There's not really a lot, and ignore, you know, so do your best. That's a lot of chapters to read in a week. Prioritize where you feel your energies are best spent. It's hard to do 5 chapters of deep reading, even though it's a small text. But note, you can at least skip chapter 4 because Google Plus no longer exists. You've got video author platform. What social media platforms should writers use? And I think that will be interesting. Obviously, MySpace may not be, unless you're in the music industry at this point, MySpace may not be one that you would consider using, for example. And then guiding questions for demographic research. Who is truly your audience? How wide does it go? And we've got information from all of these different associations that you may find that your writing sort of fits into a particular genre. You may be in the Women's Fiction Writers Association, but you may also be a part of, you know, that's demographically related to you as a writer, but the Horror Writers Association, based on the content of your writing. Audience research. This is going to be a great discussion. Take the time to not just post, but to read each other's posts to sort of get a sense of what your classmates are working on. They may have some interesting strategies that you didn't think about that you could consider that will enhance your work this term. And your final work for the week is a journal post. Okay, these are the things that you're going to think about in this post, the types of content you could create or curate for your website or blog that meet those dual audiences' needs. You're going to have interesting information that would be toward the editors and publishing houses, and interesting information that would be toward your readership. It needs to be bundled and packaged. It needs to be easily navigable. And you're going to want to model successful sites that authors in your genre tend to do. So this is where that research really does come in handy. I want to see which social media channel you think would be most effective in communicating with your audience. I had mentioned before that one of my favorite writers, Robert McCammon, he has a website, but he also uses Facebook, and he has a moderator on that Facebook page that kind of manages most of it for him. So that's interesting how he delivers information to his audience. The types of content you would create. Would you be doing analysis of text? Would you be like Stephen King, who's talking about here's something really interesting. In Stephen King's recent Twitter, he posted, or it was either a main post or a response or a retweet. I can't remember which, but he was talking about either he was asked or he just offered this sort of discussion about the only time he ever walked out of a movie theater. And so people are like, well, what time was that? And he said, well, for the original Transformers. And so then it sort of offered an interesting sort of insight into what he likes about movies and what he feels is believable and reasonable. How far does the ridiculousness of those Transformer movies go? And that is an interesting way for a writer like him to engage with his quite vast audience. Okay. So these are the assignments this week. We're easing into understanding platform and audience. And if you have any questions, by all means, reach out. And note as well for all of your assignments, discussions, journal entries, projects, you can take a look at the journal guideline or each individual assignment guidelines. For example, when you take a look at these, you can see that and I apologize for the rubric being split on 2 pages. That sometimes can make it hard to read. But the idea is when you submit, you're submitting a Word document, double-spaced, 12-point, Times New Roman font, because that's an academic, that's the very sort of generic academic layout, and that you have a good chunky paragraph of discussion for each of these main sections: website or blog content, social media channels, social media content. Obviously, you don't need a paragraph with a reference list, but I will be looking, for example, for 2 references in MLA format, because MLA is for the writer. It's a liberal arts style writer documentation method. And of course, remember, we're writers and we're really working hard on being mostly free of errors in organization and grammar. So it's important to go back and clean up your work. Think about the feedback you got in prior classes in 340, in 112. That if you struggled with commas, then that's something, if you want to set up time with me, I can help you. I'm the trained copy editor, so I can help you with that. If you struggle with fragmented sentences or random capitalization, especially if English is like your second or third language, these may be just natural issues of adapting to a secondary language or a foreign language. For some students at SNHU, English could be their third or fourth language that they just picked up a few years ago. So those language rules, the grammar and the syntax rules, even if they're brilliant writers, those rules may not always be, they may not have always memorized them. They may not be concrete yet. And that's why we have editors. We have content editors and we have copy editors in publishing. And many of you are editors. It's really interesting reading the introduction and sort of seeing everybody's skill set. Some of you will not need any of my help. But either way, I hope this class is kind of enjoyable for you. I hope you get a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in sort of dipping your toe, if you haven't already, and some of you already have, into this: how do I present myself in a professional way on the web, and how do I build a basic groundwork for my web presence for my future writing work. I'm excited to see your discussions and your journal entries. Reach out if you have any questions.